Hey, Dr. Jon Finn here. Welcome to the Habit Mechanic podcast. Right now, you can get my new best-selling book, Train Your Brain for the AI Revolution, at tougherminds.co.uk. The digital book, audiobook, and physical book are all available at a special price that you won't find anywhere else.
Hello, Habit Mechanics. Dr. Jon Finn here. Today we're going to talk about coaching, coaching ourselves, and also how we might coach others, or how we may have even be being coached by others, and why I don't think it's the traditional ways that we've been taught to do this is particularly effective. I'm joined today by my friend and colleague Andrew, who's going to help me to unpack some of this stuff. Andrew, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi there, John. Great to be with you again. I know you've expressed on a number of occasions your major reservations with the current coaching, well-being, training scene, and all the other names for it besides, and you believe it is extremely problematic, to say the least, and that's why you've responded in the way you have with the Habit Mechanic system. Just remind us of the flaws as you see them in these approaches that we see in so many places.
Yeah, I think we have to start with what's the goal of coaching, what's the goal of training, what's the goal of learning to do something in this space. It's to change our behavior. So if we go for some resilience training, we want to change our behavior so we're more resilient. When we go to a work with a coach, there's a clear reason why. I want to get better at managing stress. I want to become a better leader. To do either of those things requires changing our brain, which drives how we change our behavior. And just at a very high level, I've got the degrees that purported to train you how to do this stuff. The fundamental training that people get to help them to be coaches is just simply not designed to help you to change people's behavior. It's primarily designed to help you to give people more knowledge about what they could do to do things differently, but not actually to change our behavior. So we use that timeline of knowing to doing to habit. In chapter 5 of the Habit Mechanic book, we really go deep into learning and the learning process. And we actually go even deeper in chapter 26 of the book. And when we get good at doing something, we move from knowing to doing to habit. Biologically, we move from not having any wires in our brain about that thing that we want to get better at, like managing stress. We put some information in there which goes into our prefrontal cortex. If we want it then to stick, we have to practice implementing the things that we've learned. It could be around thinking processes and slowing down our breathing and all that kind of stuff. And then we have to continue to practice that to automate the behavior, which means we have to harness behavioral science insights. That's just not what we're taught as coaches or as people that are professionals at helping other people to do better. It's just not in the curriculum.
Yeah, and therein, I know, lies the problem. And in response to this, you have developed now and refined a 3-step habit mechanic coaching system, simple, practical, applicable for a range of contexts. I'd like to talk in detail, or in some detail, about each of the 3 steps, but if you could just give us an overview of the process as a whole to start with, that'd be really fantastic.
Maybe before we go into that, I will give an overview. Maybe let's think about how a traditional coaching process works. So depending on who you're working with, it might start with some questioning or even some psychometrics. Now, I wrote an article for Forbes recently spotlighting the flaws in psychometric testing. many leading scientists now saying that they're about as predictive as horoscopes, and I would argue they do more damage than good because they create a really fixed mindset. So straight away, that's problematic, because if you're coaching someone, you want them to be open to learning and changing, and a psychometric already suggests that they are set and they have a certain set of traits that are genetically permanent and they can't change. So that's step one in some coaching process is already flawed. Step two, you might get some tips or some tricks about the area that you want to improve. So let's say you've identified you want to work on your stress. So you might get some tips and some tricks about how to manage stress better, which you agree with and say, yeah, that's good, that's interesting, and see why that would work. And then step three kind of finishes with what I'd call verbal persuasion. So what would be a good idea is every morning if you did this, or every afternoon if you did this, or at the end of the day if you did this, and the client says, yeah, I agree, that's a good idea, and then on your way. And then you come back the week after and you haven't changed anything because you didn't practice anything different, because you forgot to do it, because it went in one ear and came out of the other. Because we don't change our behavior by knowing and agreeing it's a good idea to do something different. We change our behavior by building better habits. And that's why we created the habit mechanic. We call it the 3-step habit mechanic coaching system. This is laced throughout the habit mechanic approach. It's in the book. It's behind the scenes in the book doing this work. So we think there's a much better way to actually change our own behaviors, whether we're coaching ourselves or we're coaching someone else. The first step is we need to do intelligent self-watching. Now, in our approach, we use habit metric tools to do the heavy lifting here. So we use our in-depth habit metric tools. We use our helpful habit metric tools. We have a whole range of leadership metric tools, habit metric tools. We have team habit metric tools to guide people's understanding about themselves and to start analysing where are the destructive habits that are stopping me being at my best, and where are the potential super habits that could really start to unlock my potential. And by using these habit metric tools, what we're doing neurobiologically is we're starting to prime the brain for change. We're starting to prime the brain to start to do something differently. So that's step one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, John, and that's the difference, I think it's worth pointing out, between your habit metric tools and the old style psychometric test. I recall myself having taken a psychometric test once. I think I was told you're like this. This is the group you fit into. The habit metric tools are not deterministic in that destructive way.
No, they're designed with the understanding that we are highly malleable in our behavior and what we think and what we do, because our brains are highly malleable. Our brains are made up of over 100 billion neurons. All of those neurons are changeable. We can change them with how we practice. We can make the neurons in our brain responsible for stress stronger and more sensitive, which lots of us are doing every day. And equally, we can make the sites in our brain responsible for resilience stronger and faster acting when problems emerge. So the habit metric tools are not just treating the individual as like we're doing something to the individual, we're measuring you, we're testing you. The habit metric tools are also they start the learning journey for the individual, because they actually start to get them thinking about themselves in a different and a really helpful way. So they can start developing what we call their habit mechanic intelligence. So what most people don't know is that the foundation, the roots of the vast majority of psychometric tests are now over 100 years old. And they were started by a mother and daughter, and the mother wanted just to test the daughter. She had no psychological training at all. She was doing something that was really well intended, but that product, which is the Myers-Briggs test, is still very prominent today. But the roots of it are not science-based at all. They were just sort of interesting. but we end up labeling ourselves and other people in a really unhelpful and damaging way. If you look at Carol Dweck's work, the professor who coined the term growth mindset, she shows about the damaging effects of fixed mindsets. We call that 8-brain mindsets. And just by taking a personality test, I would say activates fixed mindset, because it makes you think that you are a certain type and that you have these certain inchangeable traits. So yeah, for me, it's perverse that we do this.
Yeah, what personality type are you? Yes, I've certainly heard a lot of that before, Jon. So yeah, that's a great piece of background, a great piece of insight for us, and I'm sure many people. Well, hopefully, it doesn't cause too much alarm, but it's nevertheless a very stark message about that aspect of some parts of the coaching industry. So step 2 then of the process, the habit mechanic coaching system. You'll work with coaches and guide them so they can teach their clients how to use the habit mechanic tools to start building super habits and destroy destructive habits. And again, it's simple and practical in all aspects.
Yeah, so we've primed the brain in the first instance. We've done a self-determining exercise that gets people thinking, unlike psychometrics, which is a test and it causes fear and actually causes the learning centers of the brain to shut down because I'm being subjected to a test and I'm being judged. We've engaged our clients in a self-determining learning process, and then we can start to, in step 2, we can start to spotlight some very specific areas people can work on. So they might want to work on sleep, diet, or exercise, and we can show them how to use the DES swap tool, for example. Might want to work on stress management, so we can show them how to use some of the stress management tools. Might want to be more focused and productive, so we can show them how to use some of the productivity and focus tools. I might want to work on leadership, so we could actually go and do some very specific leadership habit metrics and pinpoint certain areas that we could work across on in relation to being a better role model or action communicator or cultural architect or SWAT coach. And what we're starting to do is we're starting to lay down some of those cobweb connections in the brain for getting better at any one of those areas. And that's how we learn. We move from knowing to doing to habit. But what that looks like neurobiologically is that if I want to build some better stress management habits, I start with some knowledge. So I might start by learning about, well, what happens when there is a stress response and why is that problematic for the way that I think? And I'm taking that information and I'm starting to move it from my short-term memory into my longer-term memory. The more I get it and I repeat the understanding. And then I'm going to start to learn some skills that I could use to combat the negative consequences of stress. So broadly speaking, we talk about focused breathing and focused reflection. So I get some of that information into my prefrontal cortex. And the more I practice and learn about it and do some exercise and actually start doing some of focused breathing and some focused reflection, I start to grow some cobweb-like connections in my brain. And they're the foundations of starting to build a new habit. So I'm not just giving a few quick tips and some tricks. Actually, in our processes and people that have read the book and used the app and done our coaching or work with our coaches, they see that in those sessions, they're starting to actually practice using the tools and strengthening the neurobiological connections. So we start in step 1 by priming the brain for learning. And in step 2, we actually start to activate the neural pathways that are key for reprogramming our brains.
Yeah, and I think if you don't mind, Jon, I can let people listening in on a little secret, actually. I know you showed me recently some video feedback from coaches you'd worked with and helped them become certified in the habit mechanics system, and as well as them being very forthcoming in telling you that it'd been very successful for them as coaches and transformational, in fact. They actually... a number of people actually cited a significant personal benefit. I think one person has completely overhauled and transformed their own personal lifestyle with losing a stone in weight and adopting a regular exercise routine and improve the sort of sleep quality, which was fantastic to hear. So if you would just perhaps, in terms of that, how would you then start in microcosm to help someone develop their better sleep and coach and help someone to coach people to develop better sleep?
Yeah, well, this brings us on to step 3 of the 3-step process. So we might identify that we want to improve our sleep, and then we might start to use the dead swap tool, which is available actually in the app as a digital reflection and planning tool. But you might also see it in the book, in the Habit Mechanic book as well. It's in chapter 19, or you can work with the stress coach inside the app. Sorry, the sleep coach in the app. But once we have a tool, we like it, we get it, we can see, yeah, that's good actually. We need to create a habit building plan. The factors that drive our behavior are not mystical. They might be invisible, but we understand what they are, or certainly we do within the habit mechanic approach. And we explain this as the 9 action factor model. There are 9 factors that are driving our behavior, driving what we think and what we do every moment of every day. And because they haven't been explained to us in a systematic, understandable way, it's hard to control them. We hear that term behavioral science quite a lot, but we hear it in relation to very microscopic things like nudging. Nudging is one of the 9 factors. So it explains whatever that 11% of why we do what we do. Often nudging is positioned as it explains everything about why humans do what they do. It doesn't. There are 9 factors. So what we do in step 3 is we unpack those factors and we help people to build what we call habit building plans. So if you want to build a better sleep habit, you have to put that into the habit building plan system. And by doing that, you're going to start to get the 9 action factors working for you instead of against you, which they currently are. And this is the thing, whatever we're good at, and when I say the word good, we often think about positive things, but I mean, you can be good at sleeping poorly. You can be good at being stressed. You can be good at being unfocused and unproductive. Those behaviors are driven by the 9 factors. So we've got to change up some of those factors and get them working for us instead of against us. And that's what we've got with a habit building plan. So we move from priming our brain to be open to change and receptive to change and self-determining, looking for self-determining change, which is so key if we want to persist with learning. Then we actually help people to start laying down those cobwebs in the brain, and then we help them to create a plan so that it makes it really easy for them to practice deliberately the new behavior that they want to automate. In other words, turn into a habit. So that's the 3-step process.
Yeah, and just in terms of the 9 action factors, as you call them, drawn from behavioral science, and you talked about the idea of nudge. Just another anecdote from me. I know I was doing some work in a major organization in the north of England a few months ago, and people were talking about nudge theory. And I'm not going to name any names or be specific, so I can be quite candid, but there was a bit of a self-satisfied look on people's faces that they'd had the key to everything. This is the key to achieving what we want, to changing people's behavior, to getting people to act. But nudge, as you would just call it, a trigger, and that's, as you say, one of 9 other factors. It's just 1/9 of a complete whole. Am I right in thinking you would call it a trigger, John?
Yeah, we call it an external trigger. Sometimes it's loaded with other factors like reward and penalty factors. So, for example, a speed camera is, you could say, it's a nudge device, but it's got a few different things going on there. So a speed camera is a reminder about how quickly you should be driving. We now see some that are a bit digitized and have smiley faces or sad faces. So there's also a reward and penalty factor in there as well. So if you get caught speeding, you get a penalty. If you don't speed, you get a reward. You don't get a penalty, and you get to keep your license, and you don't get any more points on your license, and your car insurance goes down. And you can take it even further. In fact, there was an experiment. I think it was by a car company who did a bit of a competition, and I write about this in the book. And I think it was in I want to say Sweden. They set up some speed cameras that were part of what they called the speed camera lottery. So they extended the reward system. So therefore, if you drove past the camera and it clocked you as speeding within a limit, you got entered into a lottery, which was essentially all the fines that were submitted for people that were driving too quickly were put into a pot, and randomly some people who had been driving at the correct speed limit would be given lump sums of money. So that it's called the speed camera lottery. So triggers are malleable and we can make them more powerful than nudges, but people that were smugly saying it's all about nudge theory didn't understand that, I don't think. They thought it was about, if we can just keep reminding people what to do, they'll be able to do it. But we know that reminders are the key to everything. But used as part of an action factor system, we can make nudges very, very powerful. But they don't explain everything about why we do what we do. People will get that with the phone. They put their phone away and then they move out of sight. But still, they're probably going to go check it because it's such an addictive thing. I'm trying to think of another example where nudging isn't particularly helpful.
Yeah, well, I mean, while you do that, John, again, just of course, the premise of what we're talking about is highlighting the very problematic nature of much of existing coaching and therapy, and contrasting that very sharply with the habit mechanic approach, and the very, very practical 3-step system you've guided us through today. But I know, again, I think the UK government have got something called the nudge department. These are the upper echelons of the civil service, as I understand it, and as I've seen it reported in the media. Maybe slightly wrong, but nevertheless they say this was seen as some sort of panacea again for driving helpful action and behavior in all sorts of areas, and to tackle all sorts of, I think, quite serious social problems in some cases. So yeah, it's quite alarming to understand a lot more is needed than that as well.
Yeah, let's look at what's going on. We've got a crisis of young people using vapes, and I actually heard I think it came out of a party conference this week. They're talking about banning certain flavors of vape, for example, for kids. And a few years ago, I was working in San Francisco, and I was just reading the local paper there, and the state has a lot more power than our regions do in the UK. It just banned the tobacco companies or the vaping companies just selling it, just ban them from the state. That's it, get out. You've stepped over the line now with our young people. And that's sometimes the social behaviour that isn't being resolved by what governments are doing. So if governments knew and had fantastically powerful insights into how to manage human behaviour, we wouldn't be seeing the mental health epidemic that we're seeing. We wouldn't be seeing all these problems in society. The NHS can't get people to walk 10,000 steps a day and eat 5 portions of fruit and vegetables, and they're throwing billions and billions at trying to do this. So nudge doesn't explain everything about why we do, but it is one factor.
Yeah, well, that was a fascinating digression, nevertheless, and part of the whole subject of today's session. So you've taken us through the 3 steps in the habit mechanic coaching system. The practicality, the straightforwardness of them is so refreshing and so energizing, I find anyway. And what you say is, and what you're really doing is enabling people to work with clients to reprogram their clients' brains, and they will get a significant dividend of time in what you call high impact work. Just as we come to a close, Jon, please just break that down for us, if you would.
Yeah, I think this is so key to understand. We only have so much, in simple terms, mental capacity, conscious mental capacity every day to work on complex things. That could be mentally complex tasks at work, in your business, creating a new product, writing a new report, creating new procedures you haven't created before, working out how to integrate new generative AI into your day-to-day work. But also mentally complex things for yourself, like building a better sleep habit, like building a better stress habit, like becoming a better leader. That all takes conscious effort. We all have a small window per day. And we recognize that we have about 5 hours of that type of work that we can do per day in every 24-hour period. And if you don't do your 5 hours today, you can't do 10 hours tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. So the people that are excelling, that are really nailing it and really performing well, they are optimizing how they use that 5-hour window per day. And all of the habit mechanic systems are really designed to help you to do that. We call it high charge brain states. So what we're spotlighting for our clients, both the people that we work with one-to-one ourselves, but those that we train to be coaches, is that we can help them to activate what we call the 25-hour brain. And the 25-hour brain is spotlighting doing 5 hours of high charge work 5 days a week, which is what most people's working patterns look like. And if we can get that 5 hours done on a Monday, 5 hours done on a Tuesday, 5 hours done on a Wednesday, 5 hours done on a Thursday, 5 hours done on a Friday, we're really nailing it. And we know that for most people, they're just not able to do that. And even if people think they're very productive and focused, they're probably still leaving at least 20 hours on the table each month. And those people that are really struggling are leaving probably up to 80 hours on the table per month. Big sums of wasted time. So we know that if you follow our program, or that if you want to help others to do better, we can help you to reprogram your own brain or reprogram other people's brains so that they can do an extra 20 hours of high charge focus work per month, all the way up to an extra 80 hours of high charge focus work per month. So that's the promise that we make from our programs, and it's all backed by that 3-step coaching process that we went through.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I know you're getting significant interest. Although we've just been talking about the theories and the implementation of this in this session. Just briefly, Jon, if someone is interested, if someone is a coach and wants to overhaul their approach and their system, if someone wants to get into coaching, how can they get in touch with you to learn more about this?
Yeah, I'd contact us through the website, tougherminds.co.uk. Contact us through the contact form, and you can share the program that coaches are, or people who want to be coaches are training on and have trained on. You can see the testimonies, you can see the impact this is making, not only on the coaches' lives, but also their clients' lives as well. So you can become a certified habit mechanic coach. Fantastic program. Equally, if you want one-to-one coaching, we're now offering what we call the advanced habit mechanic certification. That's a one-to-one coaching program where we guarantee that you're going to get between an extra 20 hours and 80 hours of high impact work done every single month. So whether you want to be a coach or you want the one-to-one coaching, just contact us via the website. We can share more details about those programs. Thanks to everyone for listening. And remember, you're only ever one habit away. So keep persisting. Enjoy the rest of the week. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Habit Mechanic podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe and tell someone else about one of the ideas or insights that you found most interesting.